I'd like to call this meeting of the West Branch Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I appreciate having staff and other participants here. And we'll begin with the roll call. Leslie, if you'll do that for us.
Chairperson Fuller,
Here.
Commission Member Bowers,
Here.
Walsh,
Here.
Peck,
Here.
Bauer,
Here.
Van Scoy, absent.
We have a proposed agenda in front of us, and you may note that my voice is not much tonight. I hope it holds out the entire day, but we'll see on that. So if there is a motion to approve the proposed agenda, I'll call for that.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been approved and seconded. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, well, let's move to the first item on that agenda, which is to look at our minutes from the last meeting we had on December 3rd and see if we agree with those minutes or if there are any changes or additions to be made.
I motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, they're approved. The next item we have is to deal with what we do the first meeting of the year every year, and that is to essentially set our officers for the coming year. So, is there any thought about who might serve as chair of the commission?
I nominate John, if you're willing to do it.
As long as my
Aye.
voice holds out, I'd be willing.
That's okay.
Okay, John Fuller has been nominated with a motion and a second. Those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the second item, we have a vice chairperson who, when my voice gives away, will take over. Ryan served as that.
I nominate Ryan.
Okay, a nomination for Ryan to be serving as our vice chair,
Second.
and a second for that nomination from Sally. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we'll have the same slate serving this coming year. Next item, number D, is a public hearing. And the public hearing is about a parcel of land that's located north of Interstate 80, east of Parkside Drive, to be a planned unit development. So, I will open the public hearing. I'd be happy to hear from comments from anyone who'd like to make them. Roger?
I support the rezoning to a PUD. Got my support.
Any details about that, Roger, or just your support? Okay. Would others like to speak on the topic? Then discussion among the members of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if we want to give a little background on how we got to this point.
Sure.
but,
Yeah, let me guess.
We've had quite a bit of discussion at the staff level in order to try to accommodate what we're looking to do in this area and also keep it consistent with what was being proposed to the east. And as you're aware, that PUD to the east, the owner of that property has purchased and is interested in developing this old BP site, we'll call it. There are some challenges with that, primarily with the access to the area to the east. If we look at the previous plat of survey that was done in order to accommodate a 60-foot right-of-way through there, that leaves a pretty narrow area off to the side, and the existing building is right in that area where we would need to have a setback. It would be a non-conforming building. We also have a similar issue on the east side of that property. The existing building is close to that rear yard as it is now, and in order to allow expansion of that and looking at the future use of this property to the east as it's been proposed to us, it seemed to make sense to try to work this parcel in with the rest of it, which is already a PUD, and try to come up with a solution so that this could be developed. It would enhance that area, clean it up quite a bit, and also allow some additional expansion of that building. So the PUD gives some flexibility with the interior lot lines, as you're aware, and it is also consistent with the zoning that is adjacent to the lot. So for those reasons, it appeared that it would be appropriate to rezone this parcel to PUD as well, to accommodate what they're looking to do to expand that building. So that's how we arrived at this point, and from here, we just need to work our way through the process. So.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions of Dave Schlesinger? Any comments or questions from the commission members?
So it looks like, are we over, what's this boundary here? Is that that dotted line?
The boundary would be this dotted line here and extending on down here.
So this is it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The dotted line is actually, I think, for a B2 occupancy would be the setback line, that dotted line there.
On the backside?
Well, it goes, if you follow it all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what the 8-foot setback, that would be required for a B2 zoning.
Okay.
The desirability of having a PUD is that we can negotiate the various setback requirements.
Correct.
And be able to do so in conjunction with the entire area, so that I believe we'll get a much better result from the developer. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the public meeting to a close. The item E is to see if we approve this as a commission of the suggested PUD, or if we have any alternative thoughts or alternatives that we'd like to suggest or propose.
So B2 is where that line is, and then when we.
That's a required
If and when we
setback.
change it to the,
Yeah,
to the
that'll
bud, that would
go away.
go away. Got it.
Yes.
That was my only question.
Like Dave was saying, with the PUD zoning, it allows you
Yeah.
to
A little more flexibility. Yep.
move things around. It works best because of the, I guess maybe it could be the topographic.
Right.
You know, or
That could be part of
clustering
it.
of buildings or whatever,
Got it.
so.
Makes sense.
Yes.
I just wonder, all we're being asked at this point is to approve the rezoning, we're not approving a site, or is
No,
this a site?
Yeah.
no, just a rezoning.
Okay.
The site plan's next.
That's the next thing on the list.
In a minute.
So, if,
I guess I would make the motion to approve the
Okay.
rezoning request.
very good, Ryan. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second to the motion from Brad. Let's have a voice, let's have a roll call vote on this.
Commission member Bowers,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
That takes us to the next item, which is F, and that is to look at the site plan for the area. So, as I get my paperwork in place here.
If I can. I just had a couple of questions maybe for the developers on the site plan. Didn't see much on here related to stormwater. I don't know how that's being, are you guys able to store that on site, or how's that being controlled through that?
That's actually being addressed as part of the entire scope of what we're doing here and in the 24 acres behind and with the DOT. I was talking a little bit about it. We met with the DOT last Wednesday. Yeah, and we're trying to incorporate what they want to do, because actually in that front corner where you see the trees that are kind of in that corner, that's the area right now that the DOT is trying, they would like to purchase an easement there for their grading. So Ron has been working with them on grading the entire area so that it collects from them, from us up on the gas station, and from what we're doing in the back to run through. Dave was also part of that meeting, and we've kind of come up with a couple of different solutions for it, and we've just been kind of going through that. But yes, we are addressing all those issues. With me putting all of the property behind, I want to make sure I don't have any water issues on it. So, yeah.
I know sometimes, and maybe you don't know exactly the answer, but sometimes for a site plan, we're required to store the stormwater on site. And I don't know, it looks like this is just discharging off the site, so maybe that's allowed for the size. And since you're developing the area behind, if it's all being stored there, accounted for, it's probably not going to be a concern.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about it, but as Chad was saying, the majority of this site drains to the east, and as part of the OPD that we had submitted for the property to the east, there was a basin that was sized to handle everything that drained that direction, including this site here. So the stormwater for this area here, it will be handled in that off-site basin when that gets built, and the plan is to try to build them at pretty much the same time within the same year, to have the grading work for the basin as this is being built.
Just as a comment, I think that's one of the advantages of a PUD. We're able to deal with both of those
Yeah,
parcels.
a little bit of flexibility to be able to have that stormwater off-site instead of be constrained to have it on the property itself.
And I'm totally fine with that. I just want to make sure we talked about it. It's been,
Yep.
someone asked me where it was going, why it was getting allowed to.
Not have
Set
any
off-site.
stormwater, no, we're gonna have stormwater, and the calculations will be submitted to Dave, and he'll have a chance to review, and he'll have to approve it before anything is built with the basin.
Sounds good. I did have another question, and I'm not sure who would speak on it. It looks like, I can appreciate the sidewalks you guys have shown here on the new public street. And it looks like the city may have a need to connect that public sidewalk to Downey Street, Parkside Drive, that's what that is.
Parkside.
I wondered about the street width also. It looks like it's shown at 29 feet for the public street. I don't know if that was, I know we've had some issues in the past about large volumes of traffic, and it seems like this development may have a large volume of traffic coming to Parkside Drive. If that 29 feet is going to be sufficient or meet our current standards, if that's what we started at with this development, if that's going to be wide enough for the rest of the streets.
So Dave, share your thoughts.
Yeah, what I would suspect would happen in that area, Ryan, is that no parking would be instituted on both sides, which is on a 31-foot street, we allow parking on one side and still have two travel lanes. So if there's no parking in this area, and due to the limited right-of-way in the existing building that's there, we kind of get into a little bit of a challenge in this particular area. The other thing that's somewhat outstanding on this site plan, and we discussed this with DOT at our meeting, is they were looking for some sort of a trip generation, a turning movement analysis, and that sort of thing. That hasn't, I don't believe you've submitted that to them yet, have you, Ron?
I'm getting a proposal from IRW
Okay.
to have that work done.
Okay.
We'll
So,
get that proposal back in the next day.
and that's not only associated with this parcel because it impacts that front entrance, but also the area to the east. That's where most of the traffic is going to be generated. And they were curious, since they have this as part of their access corridor where they have the right to assign access or to determine whether or not access is allowed. They wanted to make sure that was evaluated. So there's a little bit of work being done in the background. I should point out as well that there was some discussion about the grading on the back as we expand this to the south where that new parking lot is shown and the building that's extended. That requires a fair amount of grading to the east, and some of that's on DOT right away. We had a lot of discussion with DOT about that. If they were to determine that it isn't allowed, I think there would have to be a retaining wall component to this. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that would be something we would have to review, and particularly if it was over the height requirement, it has to be designed by a structural engineer. So there are some things that are contingent upon allowing our DOT allowing us to put fill in that area. We've got a few other issues associated with the adjacent development that we're also working through with DOT, but We had pretty good discussion with them. It seems like there's at least a potential compromise. They're going through, seeing what they need to do. We're also looking, I think, a little bit at the cost implications of a couple of those items, and also how we access for maintenance and that sort of thing on the city's part. So still working through that, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that this is still active as far as review.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that we discussed it tonight, but I don't know that we're quite ready for approval until we get some of these things worked out.
Agreed. Yeah, I guess my main concern is looking back at the PUD site plan to the east. I don't know if we've actually reviewed the final site plan, but I know there's a conceptual version that was brought to us
Right.
before.
Yeah, it will literally follow this. We're kind of, we're on the way to
Yeah.
finalize that.
Just from that original concept, there was a lot of duplex units farther down this street, and we've had on other developments where there's higher density housing complaints about not enough on-street parking. So as long as there's space, we don't want to have or it would seem like I can understand there being reasons up here for the road to be narrow, but when you get into that higher density area, we want to make sure that is addressed. They have places to park.
Yeah, and on that original plat, we actually have parking areas that were set up. We contained the majority of the parking in the individual units, and visitor parking is set up in I think there's at least one pad area that we had on the multifamily portion of it. And the duplexes will have two garage, 2 driveway on those duplexes.
Okay.
So in the multifamily, it has 1 stall. We've been pouring a second pad, and then like I said, we have visitor parking on the end rather than parking in the street. But that's all loaded, that's all clear down at the, toward the bottom of it, middle to the bottom of it, so.
Sounds good. We just
Yep.
keeping an eye out.
Okay. Any questions? Well, it sounds like what we have here is really a preliminary site plan, and there may be some tweaks and changes to it. So I would suggest that a motion to postpone the determination of approval of the site plan until our next meeting, which is March 24th, would be appropriate. Or it's quite possible, and it often happens, that we have interim meetings before that time. Would the 24th be a trouble to the developer in any respect?
Are we approving this part, though, that we have, like,
Well,
not the back part, like, where are we
no,
approving
the back part comes after approval of this front part.
Can I
Sure.
say something? I just was wondering if it would be possible, I know I've been in other meetings where the P&Z has approved the site plan or plans contingent upon some issue being resolved before final approval at the council reading. And I didn't know if that would be a possibility, if this could get forwarded on to council contingent upon these issues with the DOT being resolved prior to the council reading.
Is there any, I'm sorry, John, is there any other, I know Dave just mentioned the issue with the possibility for retaining wall and the easement there. I'm not really sure what other issues you guys have to get resolved with your site plan through the city engineer review. Is there any other?
I guess I'll let Dave speak to that, he's
Well,
reviewed it.
Yeah, because with the turning lane portion of it, that isn't really, the access to this portion, that really isn't a determination. As far as the street and everything else going on, the DOT is more worried when we come to the next phase behind it. So that's more, that kind of goes along with that. As far as the access to this, we're fine. You know, we're not loading the gas station up with a bunch of people, or you don't have the traffic. They're more worried about the traffic when we put the portion behind it. So we're just trying to move forward with this one, and then when we get to the next one, which will be coming up in the next couple meetings, that portion behind there, that's where we're continuing to address that turning lane and what our traffic counts are. They were more worried about it for the development behind, not really the gas station, so.
Can you speak to that,
So
Dave?
Dave, do you have any comments as to whether there are contingencies that should be addressed first before approval?
No, I think if we could get the issue with the retaining wall and the grading worked out, that's probably the bigger issue. And then the only other thing that I would say is that this being a gas station with part of our stormwater BMPs, there are certain practices that we need to adhere to as far as making sure we don't have any contaminants leave the site, any fuel leave the site. And I hadn't given this to you before, but you've probably seen that before. It's just kind of a rough list of certain things we would want to see on the stormwater end of the site so that we don't have problems with that. And we've had Casey's do this when they built their site as well. So I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary, and it's pretty routine. But we hadn't done a very thorough review since there were a lot of things pending, but had given some comments. The stormwater, I don't have any issues with that as far as overall management being done as part of that area to the east. That the calculations demonstrated that what's there now is roughly what will continue to go out to the street. We just want to make sure that we don't have any issues, particularly with that being a national park site where that water would run. We don't want to have anything happen with that. So
What would you suggest contingencies would be if we approved it contingent upon?
I would say that if a retaining wall is required, we need to make sure that we do a review of that and that it's designed appropriately so that we don't have any issues. That it meets if it's over a certain height, that we don't have it too close to either a building or too close to the right of way, so that there's maintenance that can be done, those sort of things. So I can work with Terry as we get that if necessary, but that would be the main item.
Okay.
Yes, Sally?
It's my understanding that the current gas station does not permit trucks to utilize that site. There's a sign, no truck access. Are trucks going to be using this gas station? And
There will be a fueling truck that will be in and out of the truck, but no, there's not diesel sales
Not semis.
as far as
Not semis,
over-the-road trucks or anything like that.
Every once in a while, just maybe the truck itself, but not that, they can't get in with a full trailer on, so.
Like the cab, he was saying, like the cab of the
Right.
truck.
Well,
Truck
I
tractor.
understand the difference, I just,
But yeah, I don't think it'll change from what it is now, is that
from
right,
what it
Chad?
is now, okay,
The entrance just
because
isn't
that would
common.
change a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah, if you look at when you're looking at the site plan, it,
Oops.
we, even in our, site plan, kind of shows in some of these about how that fueling truck is gonna come in and turn around and come back out, and that's only about,
It's in the middle.
Where's it? Tell me when. That was that condition.
yeah, where's the
Gotcha.
site plan, was just here.
This one here, Brad.
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
yeah, so this is.
Right here.
Yeah, this is the,
See it?
when we turn this
Oh, I
canopy
see. Oh, no.
here, canopy sits like this here. When we
Right.
turn this, we're allowing parking to come in and then a drive lane coming out through. And so this will be where the diesel's at, and you can see there won't be any truck traffic that could come in. That's just a filler truck, that's what fills the tanks up,
Gotcha.
so, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So I'll make a motion to approve contingent on the resolution of the retaining wall or easement for the grading of the edge of the east or south edge of the property.
I second that.
And there's a second. Just to be sure, the agreement of the DOT will come in the second phase, is that correct?
Part of the agreement has to come with the first phase to make the determination on the retaining wall or the grading.
So it's related to the contingency?
So it is related to
Okay.
that. So I would say that we should hear something back from them relatively soon on that. That seemed to be a pretty straightforward conversation. They just needed to route it through. They have the interstate widening that's occurring at the same time, and the two projects impact each other. So I think it's more of just getting an agreement in place. So that might take a little bit of time, but I think it's doable. The other one with the traffic study, depending upon the outcome of that has some cost implications, so.
Great.
So I hear a motion and a second to approve the site plan contingent upon our city engineer's review of the elements that lead to general approval. So let's have a roll call vote.
Powers,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes,
Fuller,
Yes.
Bauer.
Yes.
Okay, well, that leads us to the last major item on our agenda, item F, which is G, I'm sorry, which is an ordinance about corner lots. And I don't know if this has come up before, has it, Terry?
No, I mean, from my understanding, this, first page was an ordinance that was, when Paul Stagg was here regarding corner lots on front yards. Which is your front yard, which.
This side or the,
Yep.
Yeah, and the problem with, well, not the problem, the way it was written, it really doesn't tell you where your rear yard is. So I sort of, number 4 on that separate sheet you guys have, I put down, corner lots with a frontage ratio of not more than 2 to 3. The narrowest frontage shall be considered the front yard to determine the required rear yard setback. Because you always determine your rear yard from your front yard, because it's always opposite your front yard. And then the second one, it says corner lots with a lot frontage ratio of greater than 2 to 3. Either frontage can be considered the front yard to determine the rear yard setback. And where this comes into play is where you have a 50-foot wide lot that's 150 foot deep. To
Oh,
be able
yeah.
to determine the rear yard,
which way do you face that? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, logically, you would go ahead and face your house,
No, 150.
you know, to the, towards the narrower point,
Yeah.
the narrower width. So you can put a deeper house in and garage and so forth. But there's no way in the code right now, without doing something like this, to be able to determine
Did this come up?
the rear yard.
I mean, it makes sense, but.
No, I was
it-
just reading through it. And I'm
Nice,
going, this
makes
don't-
sense, yeah.
What he's got there right now, it doesn't really tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to determine your rear yard. I mean, because of, not just for the house when it's being built, but if you want to put an addition on your house. Because you do have required setbacks that you have to maintain for rear yard and side yards.
No, it definitely clarifies that.
So I sort of threw this together to bring to the
Just toss it together.
planning and zoning, or put it together.
Well, as I understand it, this is mainly a clarification, right, Paul? Right, Terry?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's something that needs to be put in the actual ordinance, but yeah, it's a clarification so we can determine
Okay.
where a rear yard is.
Roger?
Is this to say that the rear yard could be, it doesn't have to be opposite your address? Address is usually your front yard, where your address is.
Which front yard?
Whatever street your address is would be your front yard.
Mm-hmm,
In my mind,
yeah.
does this mean
This,
that?
This is for corner lots.
this has nothing to do with the address of
Okay,
the
that's what
property.
I'm getting.
This is just
All right.
dictating, or not dictating, it's
Or the volume
telling you
area.
where your rear yard is for setbacks.
Okay.
Yeah, is what it would be.
Okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with, well, you gotta have your address on the narrowest street frontage, you know.
So does that determine, I'm thinking of the lot that I had on Hilltop. I actually had my driveway on Orange
Mhm.
and my front door on Hilltop. And if I were to call my backyard from the opposite side of my driveway, I wouldn't have had enough backyard for a setback.
Correct. Yeah, how wide was your lot?
Well, it was 93 foot, but you know, you had 25 foot on each side for the
Mhm.
side sets. But if you considered your back of your yard between the two lots, it wouldn't have been enough room for the setback.
Mhm.
Wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't have.
I mean, there's always gonna be, situations where you have existing houses on existing lots that the person's gonna have to go and, if they wanna do something in their backyard, they might have to go to the Board of Adjustment to get a special exception. That's because ordinances change over time.
But this clarifies how
Yeah.
it's used.
But
yeah.
for to be able to determine and have some form of uniformity that we can go ahead and enforce is gonna make things a lot better down the road.
Ryan?
So I think if I'm understanding this all correctly, in the scenario Jerry just described, if you were going to inspect that house when it was being built, you'd have no, under the current writing of the ordinance, you'd have no way to define what the rear yard is. in order to enforce the setback requirement. And this
Correct.
just makes it so now
Correct.
you have a well enough
Yes.
defined rear yard that you can
Correct,
make
correct.
sure that it's.
You know, because every lot and every zone has required setbacks.
So the,
And you have to, if I get a plan in here that's more or less not giving me enough setback in the rear yard,
Well, and I think from
Yeah.
a builder or a buyer requirement of a lot, like,
and
yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that just because you're addressed off this street, yeah, that's probably a front yard, but it's not your front yard to determine your rear yard.
so a corner lot right now, as it's written, could claim both of their yards that aren't their front yard as their side yard and have a different setback requirement than the rear yard? Is that the reason?
No, I mean, wherever you have lot frontage, that's still considered a front yard, no matter what. Wherever you have lot frontage. So on a corner lot, you always have two front yards.
But this
But
defines
how do you
that's-
determine
yeah.
your rear yard? Do you take it off the wide side, or do you take, opposite the wide side or the narrow side? And what this does is this tells you that if it's less than a 2-to-3 ratio, you take it off the narrow side for the longer, the longer you got more yard, more or less.
Well, any other questions in the discussion? If not, it would seem to me that although we aren't voting on this ordinance, the next time we get together, it would seem to be appropriate to see if the P&Z approves the ordinance and passes it on to the city council. So if that would be on the agenda next time, I think that would be quite appropriate. Do we have any old business facing us?
Can I ask for an update on the Kroll property? I noticed there's some stuff going on around there.
Interesting.
Sorry, not sorry.
The steel building's disappeared.
Mhm.
The crappy old green shed should be disappearing very soon, if it didn't already.
They've been taking some concrete out, I noticed.
We've hired Barnhart to tear up the concrete. It will get stacked into huge mountains of broken up concrete.
And then we contract with somebody to haul that away.
Well, we'd like to crush it
Oh,
and haul away or sell the gravel.
okay.
We have a couple developments in town who may want that gravel,
You elbowing Jerry? I'm kidding.
possibly. And KLM,
Or maybe, yeah,
maybe Chad
maybe
wants
Chad,
some.
I don't know.
It's a short trucking route, so.
Just throwing that out there, yeah.
We'd like to get it. However, we have a grant to do a lot of the demolition. The actual crushing, we have money to do it, but I don't know how much it's gonna cost. We really don't know how much it's gonna cost.
Got
It
it.
should kind of offset itself with the sale of the gravel that we sell. Probably, I don't know, it may or may not.
Okay. What's the time frame on it? I had a few neighbors reach out to me and ask me, so I told them I was coming.
I don't know if these developments want gravel this summer.
Just tossing it
I'd
out
like
there.
to see it all
Yeah.
disappear this summer.
Got it.
Pretty short truck ride.
See what happens.
But you feel like the demo of the concrete, where they're gonna make the pile, like the pile's there, but everything that's supposed to be
It's gonna be a lot
demoed
bigger
will be
piles.
done or is now?
The crushing done on site, yeah.
I'm just saying what the pads are that we're gonna demo to put on the pile to crush. Like,
All the concrete. There's foundations there.
right, but, so the time frame, we're just waiting until we figured, they've done a whole bunch of it, I
We hired
noticed.
Bruce to get started on it, so. he's-
Yeah, no, they've
he's
gotten
working on
started,
it.
okay.
Dependent. It's gonna work weather.
Weather dependent.
The machine sits inside, I don't know. Looking at snow.
I just mean getting it to chunks of concrete to be able to make it into gravel, that's what I'm talking about. Everything
That's-
should
that's
be
the goal.
chunked up.
If they want, if the city.
Do you know what I'm saying, Jerry? Like,
Yes, I do.
okay.
And if the city wants it used for, be able to sell, then it has to come pretty soon, 'cause at least for me, that's.
I like how we're talking third
I'm gonna
third
need
person to
probably
each other.
in April or May, so.
Got it. Good to know.
I couldn't tell you that.
And the Meadows is gonna, the possibility, the whole thing is if we can find a crusher to crush it to the specs that need to be
it's gotta meet DOT spec
Got it.
to be acceptable.
Okay.
So concrete doesn't always meet DOT spec. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I don't know.
And how do we determine that?
I don't know.
They'll do that.
The
The crusher will do it.
The crusher will do
They'll
it?
pay
Okay,
somebody to
cool.
test it and make sure it's right.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Okay, any more old business? If not, we have some staff reports, right?
Oh, yes, okay, updating current subdivisions, that was me. Just to give you an update, so, at the last, city council meeting, we, did accept the public improvements for the Meadows Part 4A, which is Dawson Drive, the southern part of Dawson Drive, which connects to West Orange Street. So it's now a city street, so we'll be maintaining it the best we can. My understanding is that it's not desirable that it's open right now, just because we can't really treat it like a normal street because of the new concrete. So we're toying with the idea that we might have to close it from time to time. But anyway, it has been accepted, so KLM can start selling lots, and it sounds like they've got at least 2 lots sold already. Jerry's, Cedars Edge, has 3 lots for sure sold that I know of. 1 permit has been pulled, and it sounds like there's some other ones, so we'll have a busy spring. Once it gets nice, I think we'll have a lot of permits, and we'll be keeping Terry busy.
Pretty boring, yeah?
Yeah, and then in the Meadows Part 2, 1, 2, I'm making my pieces right, there's only 2 lots left there. One was just recently purchased, and the other one is about to be purchased, so that'll be filled up as well. Those 2 remaining lots were the ones where we've been holding, they've been used for stormwater because of the stormwater issues. Stormwater had to be addressed before those could be sold. I believe we're working with KLM to install the bioswales, is that what it was?
Yes, we had some rear yard bioswales that had to be installed after the area was developed. We didn't want to put them in ahead of time because the development of the houses would just cause the sediment to go into those and choke them out. So after we get all the yards sodded, then we go back in and put in the bioswales is the plan on that. So we do have that to go yet. The basins that Leslie was talking about are sedimentation basins. So as we had the runoff coming down, we had stormwater ponds there to allow the silt to settle out, and then the water would run out of a drain line. Those had to be in place until all the houses up a hill were developed, and all that's been done now. So now that we have just those lots left, we can sell those because they're not critical for sedimentation basins anymore, since everything uphill is stabilized now. So that's what was at issue with that location.
And then there were, I think there's one other lot, I think there's actually 1 remaining lot, and that subdivision, if you remember, had like 26 lots, and they were all sold within 2 years. So that's a pretty good indication that the next part of Meadows will probably go just as well. And then, let's see, I think that was it. Cookson Development still has a couple of lots left. Maybe they'll get sold because they are going to connect with Cooney's development in the rear when they do the second phase. So things will start to move together a little bit better. And the North Side Development over on North Downey, second 8-plex is up, moving along pretty well.
Those 100% rentals?
His plan was to sell about half and half rentals. This first one is all rentals.
Okay.
So I think the second one must be ones that will be
Yeah,
for
I
sale.
thought that's what we had talked about, but
Yeah. But I think it's kind of based on demand. And then also Lathan Ridge, we got an email from
what is that one?
Lathan Ridge, which is IWB's development.
Closest to the.
We had
Oh.
we've seen their preliminary plat. They're between Gilbert Drive and Greenview. They've asked to hold off on their preliminary plat. I haven't gotten any information as to why, but they pretty much have just said we're going to hold off for a while. I don't have any information on that. So, but between Cedars Edge and the Meadows Part 4A, things will start booming along with Chad's development. So. And I do have copies of all the plats on our website, on the planning and zoning page, either preliminary and, well, in this case, I have most of the preliminary plats and the final plats only because people have started to do them in phases, and then this way in the preliminary plat you can see the whole thing. They're also posted in the lobby of the office so that when residents come in, they come in and look as well. And when lots get sold, I mark them off so people can see that we're growing,
Nice.
so. Alright.
Don't worry about
Lynch Heights, it's all full.
And Lynch Heights is full, well, yeah. And streetlights are going up someday.
Dang it.
Are you bragging over there, Bradley? Are you bragging over there, Bradley?
You asked
Get used
for
to it
them.
after a while.
Put shades up,
What's that?
put shades up.
Yeah.
You asked for it, careful what you wish for.
Any more staff reports for us?
Yeah, I can let you know what's going on with some of these projects that Leslie was just talking about. Up there on North Downey, we will probably be doing rough-ins here in the next week. And then after that, it's insulation and drywall time, so they'll move along pretty quick. Lazy Brook, the house up there that was sold, we've done all rough-ins up there, they passed. I know he's drywalled already, that would be Jason Lee, he usually moves along pretty quick.
It'll be sprayed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right
Oh,
for
really?
me. Yep.
You do drywall up there? I thought there was something wrong.
Digging for it somehow.
Yeah, they are in a rush.
Yeah, well, so. And
noticed
then, up there on Riley, if everybody remembers Riley, that's been sitting a while. IWB had to take care of some issues, payments. But I did a final inspection on 3 of the units, which was 609, 611, and 613. They're the units on the north side last night. They didn't pass, but things are pretty minor. So I'm assuming I'll be out there yet this week to.
Whatever happened with the sod in the corner of that person? I mean, I know we changed some things, but do we still have any?
You mean on the corner?
Bright Blue House?
Hilltop?
No.
Sullivan and
Peterson and
No,
Sullivan.
nothing.
No.
And do we have-
You're talking 601 Sullivan.
Do we have any way to enforce that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we changed some things after the fact, but
Redmond received a call today from him
okay.
regarding that.
That's
I'm
fine.
gonna
I just
go ahead and give
was asked
him a
about
call
that too.
tomorrow and address some situations with him.
Okay, cool.
So what are we gonna do in the future about that? Because we have some neighbors that might be in the same situation.
We're probably, my understanding, we're
Isn't
not
the
gonna
CO
give
changed?
certificates of
Yeah, the
occupancy
CO's changed.
unless they go ahead and want to escrow the sod for $5,000. Is my understanding, correct?
Yep.
That is correct.
So, yeah, they won't be able to move in until,
The CO's
because if we
type of
would've
sod.
got, if we would've gotten
Sawmill.
escrow on this property, we could've had it sodded
Totally.
ourselves. And just,
Charged.
kept the money, so,
Lessons learned.
but, yep, hey, it's part of growing.
Yeah,
We need to,
good problem to have.
that's how we
In some
learn,
ways.
so.
Okay, Terry, thank you. Our last item here is comments from the chair and commission members. Do I have any comments? If not, then I do have one, and that is that before I was gone for a month, in early December, I brought in information about the Volkswagen settlement, the trust that has been set up for electric charging stations. And I don't know if anything has happened with regard to that. I do have information from the DOT about that mitigation trust. There's a special set aside for charging stations along Interstate 80.
Oh.
The nearest charging stations to West Branch are in Iowa City and in the Quad Cities. The special set aside has a February 17th due date, although I think that the application process is not terribly troublesome or extensive. It's a 90% payment by the DOT. So I'm going to leave with Redmond the settlement trust information and the application requirements and so forth. One of the things that our comprehensive plan calls for is paying attention to changes in vehicle technology. Electric vehicles seem to be getting much more common and likely to do so in the next few years. So for economic development reasons, as well as just plain service reasons to our populace, it would seem worthwhile to take this opportunity. Roger, you got comments?
I can give you a report where we're at on that.
Good.
We discussed of hiring a grant writer to apply for that grant. Council didn't approve it.
Why?
First of all, there's no guarantee of getting the grant. It's $2,500 to write the grant.
Oh,
There's
technically.
no guarantee that we get it, so the council decided, without some sort of better guarantee, we're not gonna spend the money. So from there, Redmond and I kind of individually looked at the parameters and looked it up, and there's certain scoring parameters
Right.
that you can have, and I have no idea where we would score it. I thought that it would be pretty complicated grant.
A grant request, a grant proposal.
Yeah.
I would
thought I might
disagree.
try
I
it
didn't
myself, or
see
me
it,
and
but-
Redmond would split it up and try to hit on it, but
Yeah.
I don't have the time.
Yeah, that was,
I don't
was
have
it,
the
but-
time, and council,
John,
we decided not to pay for it to be written,
Sure.
so
Of course, there's never a promise with a grant proposal that you'll get the grant. But geographically, we're certainly well located.
Yeah.
one of the parameters, however, you're right, was if we were farther from Iowa City and if we were midway between, like every 30 miles is I thought I read that somewhere. But I don't think that would affect the score a lot. But
Some of this is county
Wilton
specific, so that would be
or,
Johnson and we would be
Walcott might
Cedar.
be a good candidate, a little better than us. We do have a national park.
We do indeed.
We have shopping and all that, but there were some of the parameters I just didn't understand how we were gonna get it together. And I think it required an actual estimate of cost, which just wasn't gonna happen before February 17th. I can't see that happening,
Did the city have a
so.
proposal at one time for a charging station that might
The
have
proposal
provided?
was for a phase,
Level one.
a low voltage one, not a low voltage, but
Not the right style is the issue?
not the right style that they're looking for. They want a fast charger. The fast chargers they're a lot of money. I
Well, one
think
of the, it's like
what-
concentrations of traffic or driver stops, amenities on or nearby the chosen site, and I think that we would nail that,
Score.
nail that kind of stuff.
We're less than a mile from the interstate, huge score there.
National
It helps.
park, in terms of traffic, and some of this is county specific, like if you had more than one in a county, but that wouldn't, we'd be exempt from that, right? From Johnson.
I can't
to
imagine
Cedar to-
there'd be another one in Cedar County.
No,
Acciona has one.
Who does?
Acciona has one up there. I don't know what level it is, whether it's level 2 or level
Yeah,
1
but
or 2.
that's a private one though. I wouldn't
yeah,
be
it's not
for
public, probably.
For an employee.
That wouldn't be.
you know, John, I know you're passionate about this. If you're willing to donate some time, we're in the budget cycle, that's the other thing, we're doing our budget.
Sure.
And it's like coming at a really rough time for us to be able to respond. But I would say if you're willing to dig in on this, I'll help you as much as I can, and maybe we can get it out better. But we just can't really spend much money on it.
So I
I
understand,
mean, we'd
right?
have to borrow the money to install it.
Yes.
You install it first, then you get reimbursed.
Right.
And then I think there's over 3 to 5 years you have to give an annual report.
Shouldn't be that
All
hard.
that.
I don't,
I don't know who's gonna do that. Maybe, not Leslie.
Well, to respond to you, Redmond, I'll see if there's a possibility and get on it this, not this week, but this coming week. And then come back to you and let you know what's happening.
Okay.
I'd love to see it, I really would, and there's a spot right over here.
Yep.
It's right across from the city hall here. There's another spot on the federal property that's even better, a little bit better. But that's jumping through hoops there.
Yeah, I think that, and besides, as you recall, they have some funds that have been set aside for one, but it just takes a lot of
Those
effort.
have to
on
be
it.
a solar standalone, that has to be a standalone. What they have funds
Yeah.
for has to be a standalone.
So I wouldn't think that anything on the Hoover site would be appropriate.
Yeah.
But,
And I got the feel that other cities are in the same pinch as we are, that
mhm.
they're gonna have this, their budget cycles as well. I don't know, outside of the bigger communities that got a lot of staff that can throw at something like this. I don't
Yeah.
know if the smaller communities are gonna.
Which if we can put something together, it might make us stand out.
Yeah,
I think that would improve the chances if we could figure out how to get it together.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's see what
Good
can
news,
be
bad news,
done.
I'm sorry, I would love to tell you we're getting the grant
I'd love to hear that.
right now, but,
Okay, item number 8 is that our next meeting will become 24th, unless we have reason to meet before that. Leslie will keep us abreast of any reasons to do so. And then the last item on the agenda is number 9, to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.
Sounds